Hi, and welcome to the GIS Center's Lunchless Learn series. Today is the fourth and final of our series, and it's titled Maps, What Makes Them Good, Bad, or Ugly, and it's an introduction to cartographic design using ArcGIS Pro. My name is Jennifer Strang, and I'm a GIS analyst here at Dalhousie Libraries.
Before you start, this presentation assumes that you have ArcGIS Pro set up on your computer. This is a Windows-based software that can be downloaded from Dalhousie software download site. If you don't have a computer that can run ArcGIS Pro, note that it is installed on all the Windows-based computers in the libraries, as well as the various computer labs across campus. It is important to note that the version that we are using in this session is 3.5.1. So if you're using a different version, you may notice some minor discrepancies between the screen captures you're seeing here compared to what you have on your own machine.
What happens if I have questions? Please feel free to ask your questions throughout the session. Just ask them in the chat screen. I'll be there waiting. If it's a general question, I'll answer it to the group as a whole. If it's something specific to you, I'll start a separate chat session with just you, and we can work through it to make sure you get through whatever issues you have. Just remember, there's no such thing as a stupid question. If ever there was, I probably asked it. The only thing I ask is to be patient, because answering through chat can take a little longer than if you're answering them in person. So just be patient. I will get to your question as soon as I can. The learning objectives for this session. We're going to learn how to set up and define elements on a map page. We're going to learn about symbolizing data on a map. We'll talk about both styles and color. We'll learn about the types of text that exist on a map. Specifically, we're going to have some tips on text placement as well as font. Then we're going to cover some miscellaneous things like alignment and inserting inset maps or key maps. In the exercise today, we're going to be creating a topographic map for Victoria, British Columbia. What exactly is a topographic map? It's a map showing physical and natural features of an area, including contours. Here's an example of a piece of a topographic map. This map comes from the National Topographic Database. It's a 1 to 50,000 scale map. And this one is 11D12, which is of the Halifax area. So again, this is only a small portion of it, but you're able to see the roads, the contours, the place names. It's what many people would consider to be a base map.
We're going to start by launching ArcGIS Pro. To do this, you're going to go to your search window near the bottom of your screen, and it's next to the Windows icon, and you're going to type in ArcGIS Pro. You should see the ArcGIS Pro app appear. You're going to click on that to get it started. Next, we need to start a new map project. To do this, under the New Map section, you're going to click on the Map button. This is going to open up a pop-up. It's going to ask you for the name of your new project. I'd like you to enter the name Victoria. Then it's going to ask you the location of this. So you're going to select a folder. So click on the folder button at the end and pay attention to where you're going to store your project. Okay, so file management is really important in GIS, and understanding and knowing where your data is will become relevant in subsequent steps. Okay, and then when you're done that, you're going to click the OK button. It'll take a moment, but a new empty map project will be opened. Next, because we're working on cartography, we're going to remove the existing base map. So to do this, you're going to uncheck the Canadian accessible style and the world accessible style in the contents pane on the left side. We're going to start by launching ArcGIS Pro. So down here in the search window that's next to the Windows icon, we're going to type in ArcGIS Pro. Okay, we're going to select the app, okay, that's here, and it'll take a moment or two for the software to open. But when it opens, we're going to start a brand new map project. Okay, so under New Project, we're going to select Map. The project name, I'd like you to give it the name Victoria. Okay, The location, it's really important that you know where this is. Where it actually is isn't that important, but you knowing where it is is. So you're going to use this browse icon at the end, and you're going to select the location that means something to you. So I know that I'm going to put mine in my downloads folder. So again, I'm going to go to my downloads folder, and I have a Lunchless Learn folder already set up for myself. So again, I'm going to scroll down and find my Lunchless Learn folder. Okay. And I'm going to click on the OK button. Then I'm going to click the OK button so the new project will get created. So you can see when it's created, it has the name Victoria. But the other thing you should note is when it creates the project, it also creates a new project database for you that's empty, as well as some other different files. Okay. When it's opened, because we're doing our cartography lecture, we're going to turn off both the Canadian accessibility and the Canadian styles. Okay, so we're going to start with a plain empty page. Next, we're going to make sure that the data is downloaded. So I should have sent you a link for this prior to the class starting. So you need to make sure it's downloaded and that it gets unzipped or extracted or uncompressed into that new project folder we just created. Remember, it's called Victoria. Okay. Next, we need to add the data that we just downloaded and extracted. So to do this, you're going to go to the Map tab inside the Layer group, and you're going to click the Add Data button. What I'd like you to do is find and then select all of the data inside the Victoria_BC.gdb. So this is the data that we just downloaded. And a hint, if you want to select all of the data within the GDB, you can hold your shift button down, select the first and then the last or record that you want to keep. Okay, then you can click the OK button. Next, I'd like you to do a quick save on your data. To do this, you're going to click on the Save button on the top right of your screen in the Quick Access toolbar. We have an empty project. The next thing we need to do is add some data to it. So in order to do that, we need to make sure our data is downloaded and unzipped. So I've already downloaded the data. You can see I put in my Lunchless Learn folder here. We need to extract it or unzip it and put it inside of this Victoria folder. So how do you do that? So the first thing you need to do is identify the zipped data is the one with the little zipper icon on it. You're going to right click on it. You're going to choose the extract all option. Okay, that's going to bring up a pop-up and it's going to ask you where you want to extract it. By default, it's going to extract it the same location as where the zipped file is, but we want to put it inside of this Victoria folder. This is our project folder. So I'm going to use the browse button. And I'm going to go to my downloads, Lunchless Learns, Victoria. And then I'm going to choose the select folder option and then extract. Okay, so therefore the data that was in this zipped file is now in the Victoria folder. Okay, so I'm going to minimize this. And now I'm going to add the data into our project. To do that, we're going to go to the Map tab up here. We're going to go to the Add Data button. Okay. Now I need to find the data that we added. So because we put it inside of our project folder, there's a nice easy way to get to it. So you can see project folders. We're going to click on that. I'm going to double click on Victoria. And you should be able to see your GDB here, this Victoria_BC.gdb. If you don't see it, you may need to hit the refresh button here. Okay. So then you're going to double click on that and you're going to see all of the data that's inside of that. Okay, we're going to add all of the data. So to do this, we're going to click on the first one. We're going to hold the shift button down. Oops. And we're going to go all the way down to the bottom, select the last item, and then we're going to click the OK button. And all of those layers are going to get added into our map by default with a bunch of random colors. And before we move on, we're going to make sure we save our project so we can easily get back to that. To do that, we're going up here to our quick access toolbar here, the third button in. If you hover over it, it tells you to save the project. So that's the one you're going to click. And you can see by default, it's going to save it under the same name here, which is called Victoria.
So how do you set the page orientation in ArcGIS Pro? You need to switch to the layout view. To do this, first you need to add a layout. To add a new layout, go to the Insert tab. Under the project group, choose New Layout drop-down, and from that drop-down, select ANSI Portrait Letter. So Victoria is more up and down than it is wide, so we want a portrait style. Next, we need to insert our map frame. Again, go to the Insert tab at the top in the Map Frames group, click on the Map Frame drop-down, and select the Victoria map. Then draw a box on your screen where you'd like to see your map. You can then resize the data frame by selecting on your map and using the handles to adjust accordingly.
So the step 2 is to set up our page. How do you do that? Well, the first thing we're going to do is add a new layout. To do that, we're going to go to the Insert tab up here at the top. We're going to click on that and we're going to choose the new layout option. You can see it's giving us a number of different options. We're going to pick the ANSI Portrait Letter. Okay, so that's this one here. I'm going to select that, and you'll notice a new tab has opened up in the center of my screen, and it's basically an empty piece of paper that is 8.5 by 11. Okay, so now we want to add our map to this piece of paper. So again, how do you do that? Again, on the Insert tab, there's the Map Frame option. Okay, so you can click on the drop down here and you can see there's one map here, which is our Victoria map. So I'm going to select on that, and then I'm going to draw the box where I'd like to see my map appear. So again, I'm just going to kind of pick the size. I'm trying to make about a half inch border kind of around the edges. Okay, so you can see I've added my map frame of the Victoria data set that I have. If you want to resize your map, you can easily do that by clicking on your handles here. So again, say maybe you want to bring it in or out, but you know, that's your option, and you can easily do that on any of the handles around the edge.
So what happens if you made a mistake or you change your mind and you'd like to adjust the orientation? Note, this is not recommended for this particular project, but I felt it important that you know how. What you would do is you need to make sure you're on the Layout option, then go to the top and click on the Layout tab. Under Page Setup Group, choose the Orientation drop-down and pick the orientation that you're interested in.
So what happens if you want the layout to be a different orientation? So instead of being portrait, which is up and down, what happens if you want it to be landscape? Well, it turns out it's pretty easy to change. To do it, you're going to go to your Layout tab up here at the top, and then in the Page Setup group, there is an orientation option. Okay, so you can change from portrait to landscape. So if I click on landscape, you can see this is what happens. It just changes the orientation of my page. So again, this is not recommended for this particular map that we're making, because we're making a map of Victoria, and that's basically this area here, which is actually more vertical than it is horizontal. So we want our page to match that, to be higher in the vertical than it is in the horizontal.
Now we want to zoom in on Victoria. So you want to right-click on Map Frame in the Contents panel on the left side. In the pop-up, you're going to choose the Activate option. Then go to the top under the Map tab and click on the Explore button. This is going to allow you access to move around your map. So now zoom in, zoom out with your center roller button, or pan around with the other buttons on your mouse. When you're happy, go to the top at the Layout tab and choose close activation button.
Now we're going to zoom into the Victoria area. Okay, the first thing I'm going to do, actually, I'm going to widen my page here. I'm going to go right to the edge. But ultimately, the Victoria area is this boot shape or sock shape area here. So we want to zoom in on that. So how do you do that? Well, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to go over here to your contents panel, to the map frame, and you're going to right click it, and it's going to bring up the pop-up. You're going to choose activate. And when you do that, you should notice that your page becomes gray and the only thing that's active is your map, or the only thing that's white is your map. When you've done this, you want to make sure you're on the map tab, explore, and this is going to allow you access to zoom in and pan around as you were before. So again, I'm using my center roller button to zoom in. Okay, and if you don't have enough precision there, you can always use the scale down here. Remember that the smaller the number, the more you're zoomed in. So I'm going to try about 300,000 on mine. Okay, obviously I want something more than that. So maybe 250. Okay, so again, that's kind of the scale that I like for my map. When I'm all done, I'm going to go up here to the layout button and I'm going to choose the close activation option. And you can see the page goes back to the regular white, so it's not grayed out, and you're ready to move on.
Next, we're ready to symbolize the various layers that make up the map. This can be done in either the map or the layout view. In the contents pane or panel on the left side, right-click the layer you're interested in changing. In this case, I'm going to change campgrounds. In the pop-up, choose Symbology. The Symbology panel will open on the right side of the page. Click on the symbol in the Symbology pane to access the symbol selector dialog so you can adjust the various things you'd like. Or, if you'd like, you can type in a search word and see if there's any symbols that are already predefined for that particular item.
Next, we're going to start to symbolize the features on our map. Okay, so you can do this either in the layout or the map view. In this case, we're just going to stay in the layout view. So the feature we're going to start with is the campgrounds here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the campgrounds. I'm going to right click on it and I'm going to click on the symbology option. That should open your panel over here on the right side. What we're going to do is we're going to click on the actual symbol because we want to adjust that symbol. And you can see here there's a gallery option where you can pick from a bunch of pre-made symbols, or you can pan over and or click on the properties option and you can just adjust the items within this particular feature that you've selected. So in my case, I'm going to move to the gallery and I'm going to type in the word campgrounds to see if there's any pre-existing symbology for campground. Okay, and you can see, turns out there are. So what you can do is, if you like any of these, you can pick one. So I like this one. And you'll notice when I pick it, it automatically appears in my contents panel over here on the left-hand side. Okay, so you can see you can do that, or if you wanted to make some custom changes, so instead of this lighter green, maybe I want to make it a slightly darker green, then I could do that. Okay, and you can see down here the symbol is showing you what it actually looks like, and you can kind of zoom in on this and get a sense. So when you're happy with it, then you can move on to the next portion.
Try symbolizing some of the other layers in your map. Note, if you're okay with the symbol and you just want to adjust the color, right-click on the symbol in your contents pane. This will bring up a pop-up and you can choose your desired color. If you want even more control of how a layer is going to be symbolized on your map, you can right-click on that layer in the contents pane, choose Symbology. In the Symbology pane, click on the symbol. Then you can change from Gallery to Properties. You can adjust the various symbol, layer, or structure by clicking on the appropriate button. adjust the desired properties.
So next I'd like you to continue on with your symbology. So in this particular case, I'm going to adjust my C-plane base. So I'm going to select on it. And because the symbology panel is already open, you can see that it will automatically appear over here. But if for some reason it wasn't open, you can always right click and get to the symbology option this way. Okay, so I'm going to click on my symbol. I'm going to go to my gallery. And for this one, a seaplane base is essentially an airport. So I'm going to look up airport and I'm going to pick the symbol. Okay, so in this particular case, I'm going to pick this icon here. But again, I want to customize this more than just having this gray plane because it's not really an airport, it's a seaplane. So blue to me seems to say seaplane, so or the water. So I'm going to click on my property and you can see it's automatically adjusted over here. Then I'm going to go to the properties. And within the properties, I have these 3 tabs that I can do some additional customization on. Okay, so I'm going to stay on the appearance, the symbol appearance option here, and I'm going to change the color from gray to like bright blue. Okay, and you can see down here it automatically appears. You'll also notice on my screen I have this auto apply. Okay, so I suggest keeping this turned on so anything you do will automatically apply to your screen. Okay, so once you're happy, you can keep it, or I mean, if you want to kind of investigate some of these other options, you can do that as well. So maybe you want this circle to be a different color, so you can click on the circle and see here you have some options to adjust the color. So maybe I want to make this a light blue, for instance, or green. Okay, I actually prefer the white, I think. So, or maybe I'll do it as a light blue. That's fine. So again, you can have absolute control over your planes or your symbology using these various buttons. Okay, and then I'm going to go back. You can see the symbol there. You can also see the symbol as it's been made onto my my layout in the contents option as well. So what I'd like you to do now is spend some time symbolizing your map. So again, you don't have to keep all of these features on your map. You can just have some of them. But like I say, spend a little bit of time getting your map to be the way you'd like it to be.
So when you're symbolizing your map, remember, the order that the layers appear in your contents pane on the left side is the order they appear on the map. Typically, you should have the points on the top, then the lines, and then the polygons on the bottom. If you have rasters, they typically go below the polygons. Other than that, you should use logical order. So for instance, if you have a river and a road, then you should have the road over top of the river, or else it's going to look like your road is flooded out. So again, use logical order where it makes the most sense. So when you're symbolizing a map, does it make sense to color all of the features in that layer the same? Well, some of the times it absolutely works. For instance, you want all your rivers likely to be the same color blue. But maybe it doesn't make sense. What happens if you wanted to choose your highways to be a different symbol than your local roads? Then you might want to adjust based on information that's in your attribute table. What I'd like to do now is color our roads based on their road classification. If you open the attribute table, it should look something like this. If you scroll over, you're going to see there's a classification field. If you read the documentation, which I'm not going to make you do, we know that 0 is for unknown road type, 1 is for highway, 2 is for main roads or numbered roads, and 3 are for secondary roads. So how do you change colors based on attributes? Turns out it's pretty easy. We're going to do this with roads. We're going to right-click on the road layer in the contents pane. This is going to bring up the pop-up, choose Symbology, and the Symbology panel is going to open up on the right. The drop-down under Symbology, select the option you want. We're going to choose Unique Values. Under Field 1, we're going to enter Classification, which is the field that contained our classification information. So again, the unique value will be the unique value in which field. In our case, it's going to be classification. Then we can change the labels and adjust colors to be what we desire them to appear on our map. So what happens if we don't want all the roads to be symbolized exactly the same way? Well, again, we found out that there is an attribute that can help us with that. So we're going to use that classification field to help symbolize the roads differently. So how do you do that? So we're going to right click on the roads and we're going to make sure the symbology option is picked. So for here, we don't want the primary symbology to be a single symbol. We want it to be based on unique values. So you can see there's lots of options here, but we want the unique values that are within that particular classification field. So we say unique values, and then you need to specify the field or the attribute that you want to symbolize based on. So where there's unique values. So there's that classification field. And you can see it automatically appears here. So what we can do now is we can adjust both the labels as well as the symbol. Okay, so again, remember that the first thing we're going to do, just to keep it easy so we know what we're symbolizing here, is 0 is considered unknown. Number 1 is considered highway. Number 2 is considered a main road. And number 3 is actually the secondary road. Okay. So you can see that we haven't actually changed the value. We've just changed the label. Okay. And once I hit enter, you'll notice it automatically appears over here in our contents panel. I'm going to uncheck all other values because we don't have any. Okay. Or for instance, the other thing we could also do is just go up here to the more button and uncheck include all other values. Okay. And you can see it automatically disappears. Now from here, we're going to symbolize each one of these various fields. Okay. So you can see right now they're kind of pastel and we can't really see them. So what I want to do is I'm going to click on the highway field here on the actual symbol. I'm going to go to the gallery and I'm going to pick the highway symbology here. Okay, when I do that, you'll see the highways will automatically highlight with that symbol because again, I have the auto apply button set up. Then I'm going to do the same for the rest of the roads. So again, for me, the main roads, I'll choose the major road. For the secondary road, I'll pick a minor road. And again, you can pick whatever you want. This is really up to you. And yeah, so kind of make it what you will. And for me, I'm just going to adjust the color for the unknown road type. Make it a little bit skinnier because they're not as important. The other thing you can choose to do if you want is move these layers up and down so they appear up and down or in a particular order in your contents pane. Okay, so for me, I'm going to push the unknown down to the bottom. So you can see I've selected the unknown. I'm using this down button. Okay, so then the roads are in order of importance: highway, main road, secondary road to the unknown. Okay, and because I have everything all set up, you can see on my map that my roads are set the way I want them to be. Make sure you're in your layout view. What is this white area that's just to the left of your map? How do we fix it? Obviously, it doesn't look right. Turns out this is the area that contains no data. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a new data set that covers this area and is the same color as the water. I'm going to suggest you move to the map pane from the layout pane. This is going to make it much easier to draw your area, and you can overshoot it by quite a bit and you don't have to worry about getting your boundary exact. When you're in the map view, we want to create a new layer. So go to the catalog pane. This is going to be on the right-hand side. At the bottom, you should see a tab for catalog. Choose databases and go into victoria.gdb. This was the geodatabase that was created when you made your project. Right-click on it, choose New Feature Class from the pop-up. For the feature class name that we're going to create, call it Fake Water. The geometry type should be polygon, and then you can click the Finish button at the bottom.
So we've determined that this area here is basically no data, but we want to clean it up and make it a little less obvious or noticeable. Okay, so what we're going to do is first we're going to go over here to the Map tab up here at the top. What we want to do is we're going to create a new layer that just covers the approximate area of the white so that we won't see the white in our map. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to create a new empty file or feature class. Okay, to do that, we're going to, on our right-hand side, go down to the catalog option. Okay, if you don't see the catalog option, you can always access it from the View tab up here, and that would be the catalog pane. Okay, doesn't matter which way you get to it. But once you get here, you're going to go into your databases option. There's your Victoria. So this is the where we want to create our new feature class. We're going to right-click on it. We're going to choose the new option, and we're going to choose feature class. Okay, so that's essentially a new layer. This pop-up appears. We're going to call it Fake Water. Notice there's no spaces in this or any special characters. You can have underscores if you'd like. I just use a change of case. The alias, if you want to have kind of special characters or whatever, you can do that here. But for us, we're not going to worry about that, and we're actually just going to hit the Finish button. Okay, so what's going to happen after you have this layer in? You're going to notice that it automatically appears in your contents panel. And remember, this always goes in order of points, then lines, and then polygons. So here is our Fake Water polygon, and it's at the very top of our polygons because it was the last one we added.
Now that we have the new layer created, we need to edit it. So go to the Edit tab at the top of the page. In the Features group, choose the Create button. The Create Features pane is going to open on the right. Click on Fake Water. Pick the shape you want to draw, then draw it on your map, double-clicking to end it. When you're finished, you want to save your edits. Go back to the top at the Edit tab and choose the Save button. The pop-up appears about saving edits. Say Yes.
Now that we've created our empty layer, we're actually going to add a shape to it so we can actually cover up this white. To do that, you're going to go up here to the Edit tab, okay? And then you're going to look for the Create option. It's in the Features group. So again, I'm going to click on Create. You'll notice the panel opens up on the right-hand side. What we're going to do is we're going to scroll down until we see our layer, which for our case is the Fake Water. So I'm going to select on that. And then I'm going to pick the tool that I want to use to draw. Because I don't actually have a set shape, I'm going to use this first option, which is Polygon. So it allows me to draw the polygon as I want to. Okay. So once I click on that first button, I'm going to actually start drawing. And you'll notice by default, my cursor automatically snaps. If I don't want it to snap, I can hold down my space bar on my keyboard, okay, and then I can start. So once I'm going to start with a left click. And you can see I'm just staying to the inside of the blue polygon, which is my water, okay. And every time I want to change direction, I can just use the left button to click. Okay, and then when I get down here, and then to end it, I'm just going to double click out here, okay? And you can see this is my shape that I've just drawn. If next I want to make sure I save that, so again in the Edit tab up here, there's a Save option. So this is saved just for your edits, okay? So I'm going to choose the Save option. It's giving me this warning, yes, I really do want to save. If I want to get rid of this selection option. So this is not the selected feature. Again, I'm going to make sure in my edit tab up here, I'm going to click the clear option. Okay, so then you can see that the symbology goes back to normal, which is just a gray outline.
Now that we have this new layer, we want to symbolize it as the same blue as the water bodies. To do this, you're going to right-click on Fake Water in the Contents panel on the left, choose the Symbology option. Then, on the right-hand side in the Symbology pane, adjust the color to match and make sure there's no outline so we don't see that outline around the edge. We want it to look continuous. Then, go to the Layout page and see what you have.
Next, we want to change this fake water color so it matches the actual water. Okay, so it doesn't stick out like a sore thumb. We want to actually make it blend in. So how do you do that? Well, it's the same as we did before. We're going to right click on our fake water. Okay, and we can go to the symbology option. So whoops, seem to have lost it. We're going to go to the symbology option and we're going to click on the symbol. Okay. You can see here I have both the color and the outline. I'm going to change the outline to no color so you can see then the gray will just disappear. But for the color option, I'm actually going to select on the green. I'm going to use this eyedropper tool. Okay, and then I'm going to go pick up the blue of the water so it matches exactly. Okay, so now you can see we don't seem to have that boundary and it just blends right in. Okay, when you're finished with that, go to the layout pane. So again, that's the tab up here at the top of the screen. And you can see that it just all looks like water. There's not that hard boundary that we're trying to figure out what's going on there.
So what other map elements should you consider? Well, title, subtitle, key map or location map, some sort of scale reference, typically a scale bar, legends, north arrows, references, credits, logos, photos. So these are items that could be somewhere on your map face or they can go on a box beside, again, depending on the type of theme or look you're trying to go for. Where should those map elements go? Well, consider the Zed Zone. The Zed Zone indicates where people from Western society typically scan a page. So that means they scan from top to bottom, left to right, and then they kind of go on the diagonal. That makes the Zed Zone the key areas where you should put some of those map elements. Next, we're going to talk about visual hierarchy. This is the presentation of features on a map in a way that implies relative importance. It's usually achieved through visual contrast. So we learned a little bit about what visual hierarchy is, but how do you achieve that visual contrast they're talking about? Well, basically by making things on the map that are more important, more visible. You can do this by changing their size. Things that are bigger seem to be more important than things that are smaller on your map. Okay, text that's bigger is more important than text that's smaller. From top to bottom, the things on the top seem to be more important than things on the bottom. We're also going to avoid putting boxes around things because that draws extra attention to that feature. Unless that's specifically what you'd like to do, we tend to avoid boxes around things like legends and things like that. One of the things to realize is don't try to fill up your map. Having that extra space makes your map easier to read and helps people focus on what is the most important thing on your map. Some tips on text. When you're designing text for a map, design within a reasonable range. Don't go super small to super large. Maybe between a 6-point font difference if you're talking about a page size map. If you're talking a poster, the range will be larger. The text can go on or around the edge of a map, but whatever you do, never ever go smaller than a 6-point font. It just makes it way too hard to read. Continuing about tips on text, you want to reduce punctuation whenever possible. Why? Well, it could be confused with map symbology. So if you got a dot under, if you're abbreviating with a dot, People may think that's a point on your map. You don't want to confuse people at all. Clarity is really, really important. You're also going to avoid underlining for the same reason. So if you want to emphasize something, try using a slightly larger font size or maybe changing the style. Again, the main reason is you don't want to consider the underline having people guess whether that's something that's actually on your map. So never underline and avoid punctuation wherever possible. Continuing on, lowercase is far more legible and should be used for most of the text that you're using on your map. Uppercase is far more difficult to read. Capital letters should typically be used to draw readers' attention. They should be used sparingly because it makes them harder to read or visually inefficient. You don't want people having a hard time reading or understanding your map. Also, when you do things in all uppercase, it creates visual clutter and that makes it hard to look at your map. So avoid doing this.
Some additional tips on text. Italics text is more difficult to read than Roman or upright text, but it is important to note that it is cartographic convention to place hydrographic features in an italic serif font. If it's in a black and white or gray shaded map, then it should be at 70% gray. If it is in a color map, then it should be a shade of blue darker than your water. As a general rule, do not use italics for text blocks and also do not use italics for language changes.
When you're using text on a map, you should consider that there should be no question about what you're trying to label if that's what you're doing. With regards to the placement should be very, very clear. Remember, positioning of your text has as much effect on the map quality as does the font style and size. Remember, text is really important to help identify the location. So typically it could be used to represent a point location, in which case it should be very close to the point. If you're labeling a linear feature, it can be used to help indicate the orientation or the length of the feature based on how much space is between it and which direction it's tilted. It can also, in a polygon, be used to designate form and function of an area. So if you're labeling something that's a great big polygon, you may want to spread the label out, make it a little bit larger and spread it out. Again, you're going to do this with spacing between the characters. Some tips on label placement. Names should either be entirely on land or water. They should never straddle the two. The lettering should be oriented to match the orientation of the structure that your map is representing. Your type should never ever be really curved under any circumstances and should only be moderately curved if it's absolutely necessary. If text overlaps the map itself, it should be the data, not the words that get interrupted. Okay? And this may seem obvious, but lettering should never ever be upside down. Now, most people would never put lettering upside down, but I'll show you an example where it can happen. Here's an example of a map, and you can see on the left-hand side it has very bad text placement or labeling placement, whereas on the right side it's much, much better. You can see in the boxes, the topmost one, you can see the labels of the point are on weird angles for the points. Always make those horizontal if you're labeling points. You can see the middle box, it's labeling a river, and that's an example of where the lettering goes upside down. You want to avoid that at all cost. You can see in the right-hand example, they've labeled it on a less curved portion of the river. You'll also notice the Atlantic Ocean in the bottommost box. Atlantic Ocean is tight and it's close to the coast, and it kind of makes you wonder what exactly it's labeling. Whereas you can see the example on the right, they've used character spacing and the Atlantic Ocean is really spread out, indicating it's a large feature that it's supposed to be labeling. Here's an example of how good text can make a huge difference in a map. On the left-hand side, you'll notice there's a bunch of labels. Everything is labeled identically. On the right hand side, you can see what a big difference changing some various features of the text and the labels can make a big difference. So you can see by labeling the lakes in blue, which matches the watercolor, makes them seem linked. The fact that there's italics compared to the rest of the font on there also indicates this is a different sort of feature, in this case, water. They've also spread it out so it's covering a larger area of the feature it's trying to label. You can also see that the color for the labels for the provinces and states are done in a color that matches the outlines. Therefore, you understand that those are linked. You can also see the all capital letters for the country names, and you can notice they're a little bit larger. Again, it's creating that visual hierarchy. So again, United States of America is the same size as Canada. They both have the same level of importance, but they are bigger than the names of the states and the provinces. You can also see that the size of the cities are marked in a smaller font than the capitals, and the fact that they've changed the case, it's mixed case compared to the states and the provinces. All of this makes it much easier to understand what the map is trying to tell you. A few more tips on titles and text in general. So map titles should be the largest piece of text that's on your map, but it shouldn't be huge. Remember, balance is key. Title should be short and descriptive. You should describe what the data is, but avoid the redundant terms like map showing. It's obviously map, you don't need to say it. When you're creating text on maps, you should use only two types of font, preferably a serif and a complementary sans serif font. So again, remember the serifs are the little tails that are on various text fonts, okay? So when I say complementary, what do I mean by that? Well, when I asked a professional cartographer about this, their suggestion was look at two letters in particular. Look at the A's and the G's. So think about an A. An A can be a circle with a line down the right side for a lowercase a. Or it could kind of have a hook at the top with a little tail at the bottom, okay, and a ball in the middle. So again, that's the A. Look at the G. Does the G just have a hook at the bottom, or does it have a little ball at the bottom? Okay, and that's both for lowercase letters. Some examples here. I'm using a serif New York font and a sans serif Lucinda Sans. So you can see, if you look at the New York, you'll see on the N's and the Y's and all the little letters, the little strokes at the bottom. Again, this helps you read a line across. And it tends to be used in things like newspapers and books. Continuing on for tips of titles and, in fact, subtitles. Subtitles have many uses. Typically, they're used to help locate a subject area. They're also used to help readers identify unfamiliar titles. Subtitles should be subservient to the title. And when I say subservient, they should be a little bit smaller potentially, and usually by default they're underneath. Both of those things indicate subservience. Titles and subtitles should be linked into one graphic unit. That way when you move one, you move the other. Next, we're going to add the title. Remember, before you add any map element, the map frame cannot be activated. It must be turned off. So if your map frame is activated, turn it off by going to the Layout tab at the top and the Close Layout button. To add the text, we're going to go to the Insert tab at the top of the screen. In the Graphics and Text group, you're going to select Straight Text. Then click on the location on the map or the page where you'd like to see your title and change the text to Victoria. Next, we want to make this text maybe a little bit bigger or bolder, because remember, according to visual hierarchy, the title should be the most visible or prominent piece of text on your screen. So how do you do that? You're going to right-click on Victoria on your page. This is going to bring up a pop-up. You're going to choose Properties. When you click the Properties, the text pane is going to open on the right side of the screen. You're going to choose the Text Symbol option, and then go to the Appearance and adjust the font and the size as you see fit.
So now we're ready to add our title. So how do you do that? Well, the first thing you want to make sure of is that you're on your layout mode. You won't be able to add a title on your map. Okay? Physically in your map tab over here, I mean. Okay, so what we want to do now is we're going to go to the Insert tab up here at the top. We're going to go and we're going to pick the straight text. I'm going to click on it, and then I'm going to click where on the map or where on my page I would like to see it. So you can see it's automatically there, and I'm going to start typing in what I'd like to see, which is Victoria. Then I'm going to click away from it, and you can see it highlights. I'm going to right click, and I'm going to scroll down till I see Properties. Okay, so the properties are the very bottom. And when you do that, you notice this panel opens up. I'm actually just going to drag it so it's on top of my, on top of my other one. Okay, so we want our element panel here. Then I'm going to go to this text symbol option here. Okay, from here you can see the first button is the general one, and it allows you to adjust your font. So maybe I'm going to keep it pretty simple. I'm going to do an Arial font. I'm going to make it maybe 24-point font, because again, this should be the biggest text on your screen. Again, that visual hierarchy that we spoke about. And maybe I'll even make it bold to make it stand out that much more. Okay, so you can see we've got our title here, and we're ready to move on to the next step.
Now that we have the title, we want to add the subtitle. The easiest way to do this is to copy and paste the main title, which is Victoria. So right click on Victoria that's on your page. This is going to bring up a pop-up. Choose Copy. Then unselect Victoria and click on some other location on your map and right click and choose the Paste option. Then it's going to place it almost on top of the original Victoria, so then just move it off. Next, we'd like to adjust the text and the font accordingly. Remember, the subtitle should be less prominent than our main title. Okay, so the first thing in the text panel to the right, we're going to change Victoria to British Columbia. You're going to click on the text symbol button and change the appearance to maybe make it less prominent. So maybe don't have it bold, maybe make it a little bit smaller.
Next, we want to add a subtitle. So the easiest way to do that is to copy our title. Okay, so we're going to right click on it. We're going to choose the copy option. We're going to click off, and we're going to right click and choose the paste option. And you can see by default, it just puts it immediately on top. We're just going to move it over. And actually, I'm going to move my map down so I have some additional space for my title and subtitle here. I'm going to click on the Victoria. You'll notice that I can either change the value in here, what I want it to be, or conversely, I can look and change it in the element option. So I'm going to change it in the element option. I'm going to change it to British Columbia. Okay. And when I hit enter, you should, well, actually I don't want to hit enter because that just gives me a space. Next, what I want to do is I want to change the font style, because again, we're going to go with the visual hierarchy. Because it's a subtitle, we want it to be less prominent than the main title. So to do that, we're going to go to the Symbology option here. Arial is fine, but maybe this time I want to change the size. I only want it to be maybe 18-point font. So you can see just by doing that, it makes it less prominent. And we can choose to maybe not make it bold. Again, that would do that. That would help take the precedence down or the visual effect of it down. But I think I'm going to pick italic maybe. And if I select off of that, you can see I now have a title, which is Victoria, and I've got the subtitle, which is British Columbia. And basically, you'll notice that the to keep with the visual hierarchy, the title is the biggest piece of text on my screen, and it's the most prominent. And I've done that by changing both the size and making it bold. British Columbia is the subtext, so it's just a little smaller, and I've made it not bold, and I've italicized it, all of which kind of give you the sense that it's not as important as the main title. Again, visual hierarchy.
Next, we'd like to align and group our title and our subtitle so they act as a single entity. So in order to align the data to get the alignment we're looking for, you're going to select both the title and the subtitle. You can do this by holding the Shift key down as you're selecting them with your mouse. Then right-click, it will bring up a pop-up, choose Align, and select the desired alignment. Once you have them aligned and positioned appropriately, what I'd like you to do is group. So they should hopefully still be both selected. You're going to right-click and choose the group option. Then you can move this title and subtitle element that is now together wherever you desire on your page.
Next, I want to align my title and my subtitle. Okay, so how do I do that? Well, the first thing I want to do is I want to select both. Okay, so I'm going to select my first. I'm going to hold my Shift button down and choose my second. I'm going to right-click and on my mouse, and I'm going to choose the Align button. And I can pick the type of alignment I want. I'm going to choose to align left. Okay, so you can see it's selected both of them, and now they're both lined up to the left side. Because I quite like how this looks and I don't want to have to be able to move one without the other, so I prefer to move as an entire unit, I'm going to group these two together. So maybe I've got a little bit too much space there, so maybe I'm going to move this one up a little bit. Okay. And now I'm going to group this as a single unit. So how do I do that? Again, I'm going to make sure they're both selected. I'm going to right click and I'm going to choose the group option. Okay, and when I do that, you'll notice they are now grouped together as a group element over here. So maybe I'll just change the name to be title so it's nice and obvious. But now I move them both together always. Okay, so again, you can position that where you'd like. So maybe I'll pick about there. Maybe a little bit farther down. But again, you've got complete control over this now. So you actually move things as a unit and you kind of keep them together.
Next, we're going to speak about legends. Legends should show and define all the non-obvious symbols on the map and highlighting the purpose of what is important on the map. Single symbols can be labeled directly on the map and don't need to be in the legend at all. It's also custom not to title a legend. It's again obviously a legend, so it doesn't need that. You can use something descriptive if you like, or it may need nothing at all because again it's quite obviously a legend. Remember, the symbols in the legend should be identical to the symbols on the map. That means they should be the same size and the same color. In ArcGIS Pro, this automatically updates the symbols in the legend based on the changes in the data frame. But if you're going to customize your legend manually, you may have to deal with customizing your symbols as well. Remember, keep all legend elements together on the page. Don't split it up into two chunks. You should always have your legend descriptors to the right of the actual symbol itself. So here's some examples of how things should appear in legends. Again, remember the symbol should be on the left, the descriptor on the right should be centered horizontally. Typically speaking, you arrange your items with the points on the top, then the lines, and then the polygons at the bottom. It's usually great if you can group your legend items together so that the things that are most similar are grouped together with maybe some spacing or at least a separate or bolder title to indicate this is a separate group of symbols.
Before we add the legend, we want to rename our layers. If you noted, some of our layers have underscores or all lowercase. So if you want it to appear differently in your legend, you need to rename those labels in your contents panel. Note, this can be done either in the layout or the map page, it doesn't matter. And you have two ways to do this. The first is to do a slow double click on the layer name and the contents, and you'll notice that it will allow you to change the name. It's important to realize that this is just an alias change. It's actually not changing the name of the layer, but just how it's going to appear in your map. Okay. Your second option would be to right click on your layer name that you want to change in the contents panel, go to properties, and it will open up a new window. And in the general tab, you can change the name that will appear in your legend. So we're now going to rename our layers. Okay, so this is again just going to create an alias for these layers. There's two ways to do this. And again, it can either be done in the layout or the map view. I'm going to leave it in the layout view. And I'm going to do a slow double click on my layer. And when you do that, you'll notice that it becomes editable. So in my case, I'm going to use camel case or mixed case and get rid of any underscores. Okay, so you can see now that layer is called C-plane base. I'm going to continue doing this kind of change all the way down. The other way you can change the name, if you're having a problem with a slow double click, you can do a single right click. You can scroll all the way down and go to the properties option. And then you can see we're in the general tab, and here's the name. I'm going to change it from runway with a lowercase r to a capital R. I'm going to click OK. And when I make that change, you'll see it automatically appears over here in the contents panel. So I'm going to continue making this change for all of the layers within my contents that actually are being shown. So you can see I've turned off the toponyms, which are actually featured layered places. Okay, so I don't want to see the places on my map, so I've just turned those off.
Now we're ready to add our legend. So we want to make sure we're on the layout pane by clicking the layout in the view area. Then go to the Insert tab, the Legend button, and draw a box on the page where you'd like the legend to go. To move the legend position, go to the Layout tab and choose the Select button and move it around. Remember, you may not want everything that appears in your contents to actually appear in your legend. So maybe you want to remove some of those obvious items that we said we don't need to have in our legend, or those single items, so you can remove those. So how do you do that? So to do that, you're going to go to the contents panel on the left. You're going to expand the legend. You're going to uncheck the items in the legend that you do not want to show. If you'd like to change the locations of the item in the legend, simply select it in the list and move the location up or down in the legend contents pane.
Now I'm ready to add my legend now that I've changed all my names. Okay, so you'll notice I have no underscores anymore. I've got camel case or mixed case lettering. So how do I add my legend? I'm going to make sure I'm on the Insert tab. I'm going to go to the legend option. I'm going to click on it. And then I'm going to draw where I'd like to see my legend appear. I could do a single click, it'll automatically appear, or in my case, I'm going to try to get it to fit in this area over here. Okay, so looks pretty good to me. Just going to move it over a little bit, so maybe I'll make it a little bit narrower so I don't cover up this small island here. Okay, so when I get over here, you can see I've got the legend. I'm going to take out all the obvious named things. Okay, so in my case, anything that's blue on a map typically is water. So if I don't want to see it in my legend, then I'm going to actually turn it off over here in my legends in the contents pane. Okay, so the things that I don't want to see, maybe my fake water. So that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I'm also going to turn off my actual water. Again, because that's an obvious feature that's on my map. Then the next thing I'm going to do is maybe turn off my rivers. Okay. If I want to change the location of something in my map, so the fact that the trails are up here and it's kind of associated with the types of of roads. I kind of want to move it down my list a little bit. So if I want to do that, then I can pick up by trails over here in the contents panel, and I'm going to drag it underneath the roads. Okay, so then you can see I've got my unknown and then my trails and then my railways, etc. Okay, so again, you have a lot of control of what you can do here. Right now, we're just focusing on what things we want to see in our legend, and also what we want to, the order we want to see them in.
Now you're ready to adjust any other features on your legend that you'd like. To do this, right-click on the legend on your map. It's going to bring up a pop-up, choose Properties. When you choose Properties, the Format Legend panel is going to open on the right. Go through the options and change any desired features. Just remember that the legend items that are in the content page are related to the element page that's showing on the right. Remember, when you're finished, don't forget to save using the Quick Save button in the upper left corner.
So I'd like to spend a little more time on this legend. Okay, so in order to do that, I can right-click on my legend and I can go to the Properties option. You'll notice this panel opens up on the right-hand side. Okay, so, and I want to make sure that I've selected my entire legend. Okay, so from here, what I'd like to do now is I want to get rid of this legend. Again, we're trying to get rid of all obvious features in our legend, and a legend is obviously a legend. The other thing is it's actually kind of vying for what is more important, the title or the word legend. So I'd say this legend really isn't that important, so I'm going to remove it. So if you see on my element page here, if I scroll down or look down a little bit under title, I'm going to uncheck show. And you can see it just appears from there. Okay, so what other things can we do? What we're going to do now is we're going to go to our legend items and to the show properties. Okay, because what I'd like to do is I want to get rid of this double name for our roads. I want to keep one or the other. Okay, so I'm going to go into this show properties button, and I'm going to uncheck this layer name. Okay, so when I do that, you'll notice that I got rid of the name roads, and now I just have the road type. Okay, if I scroll down a little bit, one of the things you can also do is show only the features visible in the map extent. So if any of these items don't actually exist within this map frame, I don't want it to appear in the legend. That just confuses people. So I'm going to click on that option. Okay, and it doesn't look like there's anything that disappeared, so it looks like I'm okay there. Yeah, so one of the other things I'd like to do is I'd like to indent these road features to kind of set them apart from some of the other ones. So again, how do I do that? Well, right now you can see we have multiple items selected. Okay, and they're all highlighted here in my legend in my contents panel. So I'm going to basically, I only want to focus on the road types. So I'm going to click on roads, and from there under elements, which is where I'm at, and it's only the elements for the roads, I have an indents option. So I'm going to click on indents, and I'm going to change this by maybe 15 point. Okay. And you'll notice when I do that, it actually just indents that whole line of text by 15 point. If I wanted the road or the trails to look like they were part of that, I could click on the trails. And again, we're just on the trails and we're in the indent section. I'm going to pick 15. And it makes it look as though it's part of the road type. So trails and roads be together. Okay, so again, you have control over this. You can choose what where you want to see things, what sort of spacing, etc. But I think my legend is actually coming together pretty well now. I'm getting close to what I'm happy with, so I think I'll just leave it at that.
Next, we're going to talk about inserting a scale bar. Remember, a scale bar is a relationship between the size of features on a map to what they are in the real physical world. You can do a ratio, 1:50,000 or 1/50,000, or you can use a scale bar. Typically, I'm going to recommend you use a scale bar. Why? Because for most people, it's far easier to understand. Another is if your image gets blown up, your scale becomes false. If you have a scale bar, it's going to adjust accordingly. The other thing to remember is depending on your map, your projection, and the area you're dealing with, sometimes scale bars don't really make any sense at all to put on a map. So just be aware of that. So sometimes scale bars are not required and not recommended. So how do you insert a scale bar in ArcGIS Pro? Well, you go to the Insert tab. You're going to go to the scale bar drop down. You're going to choose your preferred style. Remember, simpler is typically better. You're going to click on the desired location on the map. If you'd like to adjust the spelling of kilometers from ERS to RES, so this is typically an American versus a British sort of spelling issue, or just change to KM, which is kind of standardized everywhere. You can right click on the scale bar on your map. If the scale bar panel doesn't open on the right side, you can right click and choose properties, and then it'll be open on the right side. Go to the Design tab. In the Units group, change to your desired unit and your spelling. Again, pay attention to the scale bar divisions, that they still make sense. Adjust it accordingly so you can click on the scale and make it longer or shorter to make your numbers nice and even.
Now we're ready to add our scale bar to our map. So remember, not all maps need that, but large scale maps, i.e. small areas, should have them. Okay, so again, here's my scale bar button. I'm going to click on it. There's a drop down. I can pick both the metric or the empirical. Again, I want metric, and I'm going to pick a pretty basic one, so I'm going to select this one. And then I'm going to go on my map. Where would I like to see the scale bar? So I'm just going to click in the lower corner of my map. Okay, so if we zoom in here, you'll notice that the way that kilometers is spelt is ending in ERS. This is the American spelling of kilometers. Canadians typically will spell it RES. Okay, but if we want to keep it international, maybe we'll just use the general symbology, or the general shortened abbreviation for it. So how do I do that? Well, I need to be in my properties bar. So by default, it automatically opened, but if for some reason you don't see it, you can always right click on your scale bar and go to the properties option, and it'll automatically appear. Okay. So down here under the map units, you can see the map units is kilometers, which is fine. But the label text, instead of being the American spelling, I'm just going to use the abbreviation, little k, little m. And you can see when I did that, because the abbreviation is shorter, it's adjusted my scale bar, and it actually isn't particularly even. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to shorten the line until I get to maybe 10. Actually, 12 is pretty good too, so you got nice even numbers. Okay, and again, I don't want it stuck right to the bottom, but because of this, but I do want it close to the bottom. So if you keep finding it sticking, you can hold your spacebar button down to stop the snap to option. Okay, so there you can see I've got my scale bar inserted, and it looks good, and I'm ready to move on.
Next, we're going to talk about north arrows. North arrows should be at the top of the page whenever possible. Typically, you want to keep it pretty simple, not too fancy, unless you're making a pirate map, perhaps. It should not be too large or overwhelming. If the north arrow includes the letter N, it should be one in a font or format that's similar to what's used on the rest of the map. Remember, north arrows are not always necessary, depending on the projection that your data is being presented in, or the presence of a graticule. It turns out adding a north arrow is pretty easy. Make sure you're on the layout page, go to the Insert tab, north arrow button, and select the desired north arrow. Click on your map and then move it to the desired location, typically towards the top of the page.
Now I'm ready to add my north arrow. So I do want to add it to this top corner. So if that's the case, I'm actually going to move my legend down a bit. So again, I'm selecting on my legend and I'm just going to drag. Oop, I selected my whole map, so that's not good. I'll click the undo button. I want just my legend, so you can see only that is highlighted. And now I'm going to just move it down here a little bit and maybe over. Yeah. So now I'm ready to add my north arrow. I just want a little north arrow up here. To do that, I'm going to make sure I'm clicking on my insert button, and there's my north arrow. I use the drop down button. You can see there's lots of different north arrows to pick from. I'm going to pick the one that I think is going to work best on my map. So I'm just going to pick this kind of black one, and then I'm going to put it in this upper corner. So just going to do a single click where I want it to go. But if I look at it, well, I notice first that it's pretty dominant, right? So this black color draws a lot of attention to it. So I'm going to try to change the color to that. So how do I do it? I'm going to select on it, and you'll notice it automatically appears here in the pane on the right hand side. If it doesn't, you can always right click and go to properties. It'll appear there. So I'm going to click right on the symbol, and I'm going to change the color from black to maybe a mid-gray. Okay. The other thing I'm going to do is, this seems to be a bit big for me. So again, I'm going to click on my symbol and I'm going to change it to maybe 38. See what that looks like. And click off of it. So you can see that looks a little bit better. At least I think it looks a little bit better. So I'm just going to move the location maybe a bit, as well as my actual legend. So again, I'm just going to shrink this up and then move it over to the side. Okay, so I'm thinking my map is looking pretty good at this point. Maybe I'll widen this a little bit. Again, you have control over your map and how you want it to appear. So again, do what you need to, but I think we're getting to the point that it's looking pretty good. The north arrow is there. It looks good. It's not so dominant, and our visual hierarchy seems to be working.
Sources and credits. When you're creating a map, they must be included. Okay, the same way you would always cite other papers when you're writing your paper, you must also cite your sources for your map. If you're adding logos, make sure to request them from the company so they look professional. You don't want to take a screen capture off of a website, which can be quite low resolution. Remember to sort not only your data sources, but the dates, because sometimes this data will change through time, and it's always important to know the date of the data. Make sure to credit your company and yourself as the cartographer. Some examples of citing maps created from GIS data. So here's an example showing the data producer, the name of the database or data source, the title of the subset, what format it came in, who generated the file, what software it was generated in, and the methodology used to generate the file, as well as the date. Okay, there's a bunch of other examples that you can see at libguides.mcmaster.ca/site-maps. I should note that often if a map is part of a larger paper, the full citation will be given at the back with the rest of the sources and citations, and only an abbreviated one will be shown on the map face itself. If you're adding citations or other additional text or graphics, they're all done in a very similar way. You're going to make sure you're on the layout, go to the Insert tab, and then click on the desired button for the relevant item, and then select on the map. Adjust the properties as required.
Now we're going to add some credit and source information. To do that, again, you need to be on your layout view here. Again, under the Insert tab, we're going to add that straight text again. So then I'm going to click on my map where I like to add it. Okay, and then I'm going to click in my box or double click inside my box, and I'm going to type in what I wanted. Just to keep things moving, I've actually just copied it in. Okay. So when I'm done, I can always change over to my text symbol. I can adjust some of the text. So again, I want to keep the font consistent across my map. So I want it to be an Arial font. Okay. And then I'm going to select it again. and I think it's a little big and a little too prominent. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to change the size to 8-point font, and I'm going to adjust the color to maybe a mid-gray again. Okay, so it's looking pretty good. If I scroll down a little bit, I should be able to, oh, pardon me, or I hit this other button over here. I should be able to adjust the I should be able to adjust from, oh, the positioning. So I want it to be right justified. Okay, so I'm going to click on that. It's right justified, and then I'm going to move it on my page where I'd like to see it. And again, if you don't want it to do the snapping, you can just hold your space bar down. I'm going to move that up a little bit. Okay, so I'm looking at my map. It's looking pretty good.
Next, we're going to talk about key maps or location maps. Although we're not going to add one to our existing map that we've been working on, it is important to know a little bit about them. So key maps or location maps help to locate our main map in relation to a larger, more general, well-known place. Okay, so in our case, we may show a key map, if we were going to do one, of where Victoria is in British Columbia. Or if your audience wasn't even familiar with that, you could put it on a map of Canada, for instance. It should cover a much larger area than our main map, a minimum of 5 times the area of what you're looking at on your main map. And you should show where your main map is located in this larger, more generalized area. Next, we're going to speak about inset maps. So inset maps are kind of the opposite of a key map. You're showing a small portion of your main map, but in far more detail. It's typically done when you have a lot of complex symbology and it's really difficult to make out what's going on. So you show it at a larger scale or smaller area. When you're doing inset maps, you could consider that map to have its own scale. You could label its coordinates or even have its own title. But again, these are optional, and again, that's going to be up to the designer of the map. Again, although I'm not going to add a key or location map, I thought I would talk about how you would do it. The first thing you would do is you need to create a new map. You do this by going to your Insert tab, New Map button. You're going to add the data to that new map and symbolize it appropriately. Then go to the Layout in the View area, and you're going to go to the Insert tab, Map Frame, and choose this second map that you've just created. If desired, you can choose to add additional map elements. If you'd like to add the extent indicator of where the main map is in relation to your either location or key map, you can right-click on the Insert tab on the map where your area is going to be shown and choose the Extent Indicator button. Voila, now we have our map. How does it look? Hopefully you'll agree it looks a lot better than when we first started. So here's the map. You can see on the left-hand side, I've done some zoom ins on the title and the subtitle, so you can see they're all aligned and positioned properly. You can see we've added the north arrow and the legend, as well as our scale bar and our citation, an abbreviated version. Overall, we were able to create a useful map in just a little over an hour. Great job! Most people would like to take their map out of ArcGIS Pro and bring it into another program. To do this, you need to export your map. How do you do this? You're going to go to the Share tab at the top of the screen, and you're going to use the Layout Print option if you're sending it directly to a printer. Or if you're looking to export it out as a file, you can use the Layout Export option and choose a format that you'd like and verify the various parameters. You should be particularly cautious of the resolution. You'll want that to be at least 300 dpi.
Often people want to take their map out and bring it into another program like Word or PowerPoint. So how do you do that? Well, you go up here to the share button at the top of the screen. If you have a printer attached to it and you just want to print it out to get a hard copy, you would use this print layout button. But if you don't have a printer attached or you actually want to bring it into a different software, you're going to use this export layout option. Okay, when you click on that, you're going to notice the panel opens up on the right hand side. The first thing it's going to do is ask you what format you would like to export it out to. So maybe this time I'm going to export it out as a JPEG. Do pay attention to the location and name. So again, by default, it is going into your project folder called Victoria, and it's got the default name layout.jpg. Okay, I'm going to choose to the clip to the graphic extents, so I'm going to get rid of this extra white space around here. You can go through. The resolution is also something you should pay attention to. By default, it should be 300 dpi. If you want to adjust it higher, that's fine. But when you've entered all of your parameters, then you can just click on the export button. I'll take a moment or two, and you can see down here, you can view the exported file. So I'm going to click on that. And you can see that it automatically opens up in the appropriate software. Okay, so you can see here, because I've said clip to extent, I've gotten rid of any extra white space around the file. So this file could then be brought into PowerPoint or Word or any other program that you'd like.
Color is a really important feature on a map that you should be considering. If you're trying to highlight two main things on your map, consider using the color wheel and picking complementary colors. Complementary colors are colors that are on opposite sides of the color wheel. They're going to give you your greatest contrast. So in the example below, you can see red and green are a nice complementary color, or blue and orange. Triads, on the other hand, give you a harmonious color scheme, and this would be equivalent to putting an equilateral triangle on top of your color wheel, and each corner that your triangle falls in would be your complementary color scheme. So in this particular instance, there's two examples below. Red, blue, and yellow would be a complementary color scheme, as would violet, orange, and green. If you're using text on your map to label, consider labeling with the same color, only maybe a little bit darker. So if you're labeling water that's shown in blue or symbolized in blue, consider labeling the text in a darker blue. A wonderful resource for color is www.colorbrewer2.org. This will give you some really interesting color palettes to pick from. It will also tell you whether it's good for color blindness or photocopying and things like that. So again, when you're using color on your map, use associative colors. Blue for water, green for vegetation. If you see an area in white on a map, it typically means no data. Gray is reserved for non-subject areas. So for instance, if you're doing a map of Nova Scotia, then maybe New Brunswick would be shown in gray, or maybe PEI in New Brunswick if that's shown as part of your map. Typically, you'll want to avoid stereotypes, as some people can find that very hurtful. Blue for boys, pink for girls, for example. So here's a quick quiz. We have two maps, one on the left, one on the right. Which one do you think is better designed, and why? Hopefully you'll think the map on the right is a lot easier to look at. The one on the left, you'll notice, has a script font for the title, makes it very difficult to read. You'll also notice that it's put borders around the north arrow, the scale bar, and the legend. This tends to draw too much attention to those portions of the map instead of what's really important, which is the map itself. Again, we have two maps here, one on the left, one on the right. If you look at the one on the left, hopefully you'll agree that there's something distracting about it. You might not be able to put your finger on it exactly, but if you take a look on the right, you're going to see what it is that your eye is seeing. It's the fact that things aren't aligned. Your eye is really good at picking this up naturally, and if things aren't aligned, it's very distracting to your eye. So if you align these things, you're going to end up with a much more harmonious looking map. Remember, they say that a picture is 1,000 words, but a map is 1,000 pictures. So ultimately, every decision you made to create your map is giving the reader some level of importance in what you think that is. Okay, so everything you've chosen to put on your map, or in fact leave off your map, is telling a story. How you've chosen to symbolize things is also indicating its relevant importance, where it is in the visual hierarchy. So again, use these newfound skills with skill and care. Giving credit where credit is due. Much of the information in this demonstration has come from Esri's Virtual Campus courses. If you're interested in taking Esri's Virtual Campus courses, please contact the GIS Center and we'll show you how to get set up with that. Many of the information and images that came in this presentation were from Designing Better Maps, a guide for GIS users, labeling and text hierarchy and cartography, the elements of cartography, as well as the Esri website itself. So if you'd like to contact us at the GIS Center, we are located on the 5th floor of the Killam Library behind Special Collections. Again, my name is Jennifer Strang. You can send me an email at jennifer.strang@dal.ca or 902-494-1386. If you'd like to book an appointment online with either myself or any of the other of my colleagues, you can book an appointment at www.dal.ca/GIS and look for the book an appointment link.